Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to our /EntitledPeople, where people truly believe they can do what they want, when they want, because the world revolves around them. And in today's episode, we've got entitled landlords getting ruined, Karens harassing store employees as usual, people throwing fits on flights. It's wild, guys. I hope you enjoy the stories. Don't shake your heads too hard. And as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. So here's a little backstory. I work in a store that has samples, and one sample is a really spicy hot sauce. It makes grown men cry. Also, with the sauce being really hot, kids are not allowed to try that sauce unless they have permission from a parent. So one day, this boy and his mom comes in, and the kid tries some of our sauces, mostly mild and one slightly spicy. The boy eventually notices the super hot sauce, and he asks me to try it, to which I say, "Oh, you can't try that without parent permission. It's insanely hot, and it can even cause grown-ups to cry." And I'm not lying. I've seen adults saying they can handle spicy, and they would immediately tear up and start coughing uncontrollably from this. Definitely not for kids. At that, the kid says, "Oh, okay," and he walks away. And I thought that was the end of it, but boy was I wrong. Apparently the boy had told his mom what I said in some twisted way or something, and she comes storming up to me screaming, "How dare you tell my son that he's too much of a wimp to try the hot one? I will have you know that he can probably handle that hot sauce better than you can. So just do your job like you're trained to and let my boy try." Me, already annoyed that this woman went 0 to 100 on me, say, "Ma'am, I didn't call your son a wimp. I told your son that this sauce is very hot and it'll be very painful and he shouldn't try it. But if he had parents' permission, it's okay." And of course, that's when Karen says, "I think my son can handle a little hot sauce." Now, when I said this sauce is very spicy, I wasn't kidding. This sauce rates out at a whopping 750,000 Scoville units and uses pepper extract to reach that heat. And if you didn't know, pepper extract is an oil, and oil will linger in your mouth, so this sauce will burn for a good 20 minutes. So with that, I dip a pretzel stick into the hot sauce and hand it to him. A good 1 second goes by after he took a bite of the pretzel, and you could see his face contort into sheer terror and agony. The kid starts crying, blubbering, screaming, incoherently speaking at the same time. It was quite a sight to behold. That's when Karen screams at me and says, "What have you done to my son? What have you given him? You must have poisoned him." The kid is crying and screaming at this point, and that's when Karen says, "He eats hot Cheetos all the time. He can handle hot. What did you give him?" At that, I think, hot Cheetos don't even get anywhere close to how hot this sauce is. So I tell her and say, "Ma'am, this sauce is far hotter than a habanero, and at least a few hundred times hotter than hot Cheetos." At this point, the kid is screaming, "Mommy, it hurts." And she says, "I'm gonna sue you for poisoning my baby. Now give me chocolate milk for free." Because we sold chocolate milk for $1.50. I say to her, "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I can't do that. You'll have to pay like everyone else." So yeah, at this point, she's screaming so much that you could probably mistake her for a flock of chickens all getting strangled or something. The woman then storms off in a huff, and I never saw her again. Ugh, like, did that woman really say that her son can handle hot Cheetos after he had that ridiculously hot sample? I'm shaking my head so hard at this, guys. And honestly, I'm actually surprised that cops didn't show up, because with all the stories I read, people have called cops on way less. With that said, OP should have had mom try some first. "Ma'am, if you try it first and you can handle it, then you can give it to your son." And honestly, I hope that boy ended up okay though, because mom's entitled ego got the better of her that day, and her son paid the price. Okay, so just to preface this, I'm a cabin crew member, a flight attendant, and I've been doing it for over 10 years. Any issues that crop up during my workday, I will bend over backwards to accommodate people, if I can. However, there are unfortunately a handful of people that are entitled and also dishonest to try to get what they want. Some people will fake injuries to try to get upgraded, fake birthdays, you name it. I've had loads of scenarios where people try to cheat the system because it makes them feel special, or that they've one-upped me, I guess. With that said, let me tell you about a fake vegetarian I had on the board one time. The guy was flying economy, which is coach, in the second from last row. The guy wanted the pasta option. I apologized and told him due to popular demand, we had run out in the middle of the cabin, but we had the chicken option instead if he wanted that. Without skipping a beat, the guy says, "I'm a vegetarian. Last time, they brought me a meal from business class, so I'll wait for that." Now, this is something I would have offered anyway if available, as I'm not too much of a dick, and I genuinely like helping people out if I can. After all, it's a 747, not a 7-Eleven, as the saying goes. Anyways, the way he just expected it right off the bat, before I could even offer a solution, left a slightly bad taste in my mouth. And also, I smelled a rat. I was 99% sure that I had cleared an empty packet of smoky bacon chips from him early on. And no, they weren't a veggie brand, as I have the same ones occasionally. I was certain that he was being picky and he wanted a higher quality meal. Plus, any regular flyer would know how often we run out of the veggie option and to pre-order a veggie meal. So I say to him, "It's unfortunate that you didn't pre-order a vegetation meal, but I'll see what I can do for you though. Just give me 5 minutes to finish up here." Anyways, I went up to business class and they also ran out of the veggie option. So I went up to first class and asked if they could spare anything. We ended up putting together a few leaves with a bit of dressing. They spend thousands or more up there and they can dine at any time. So they didn't want me taking any of the hot veggie options in case someone wanted it later. Fair enough. And then I thought I could probably have some fun with this fake entitled vegetarian. With that thought, I brought it back down on a silver tray and held it above his eyeline so he couldn't see what it was. I then explained that unfortunately, the vegetarian business class option had run out, and then he went to cut me off so he could complain. But then I held up my hand and said, "However, I managed to go one step further and I got the last vegetarian meal from first class." Then I pulled the linen cloth off the top of the tray as I placed the salad down in front of him. It really was a very basic but large salad, and his face said it all. This is the freshest salad and what they're dining on in first class. The guy's face went from a smug, "Ha, I worked the system," to "What the F is that?" within 2/3 of a second flat. He then said to me, "I wanted something hot, so I'll just have the chicken dish then." At that, I put on a shocked face and said, "I cannot give you that, sir. I would feel awful." He then responded with, "Don't worry about it. It's fine. I'll eat chicken today. Just get me the chicken." I then give him a look that said, "Are you sure you're a vegetarian?" and then brought back the chicken, by which point it had been sitting drying up in the oven a little bit longer. Bon appetit. Oh man, talk about a plan backfiring, guys. If I were that man, I would have stood my ground and died on that hill. Oh, no vegetarian option? Well, I guess I'm going to be hungry on this flight. Because if you lie and tell someone you're a vegetarian and make a huge fuss about it, there is no way you can then eat the chicken. You will look like a fool. So let me give you a bit of backstory to this. When I was in my last year of university, I, a 21-year-old male, used to work at a huge supermarket franchise. It was a seasonal job, set up in the months just before Christmas, and the run up to Christmas was exceptionally cold. Also, just in case my ex-boss somehow finds this story, I'm gonna change her name to slightly something more appropriate, Karen. Anyways, on to the story. So during the month of November, I started getting sick. Nothing too strange, just a cough and a runny nose. But come the beginning of December, I was hit hard by the flu. It was so bad that I ended up practically bedridden for a week. Now, something I didn't mention earlier is the store had a policy that you're not allowed sick leave or holiday leave during the last 2 weeks of December, as these 2 weeks cover both Christmas and New Year. So the week before Christmas, you guessed it, I got sick. I woke up completely drained of all my energy, coughing, sneezing, and had a high temperature. My parents called my doctor and got me an appointment to see him. Now, usually they don't give you a doctor's note for the flu, but by the time the doctor had seen me, I was barely conscious, and I could not string together a coherent sentence. And so, he gave me a note and in a stern voice said, "Call your work, tell them you can't work, and if they have a problem, give them my number." He then proceeds to give me a doctor's note with his number on it. And so, when I got home, I called up my boss and said, "Hey Karen, I'm not gonna be able to come in today. I'm really not feeling good. I can barely move." There was a pause for a moment, and in her typical Karen voice, she replies, "Nope, that's not good enough. I have you scheduled to work from 1 p.m. to 12 a.m., and you'd better be here. I have no one to cover you. If you're not here, I will have you fired." And of course, I'm stunned for a minute. I just reply with, "Well, I've been to the GP, and he's given me a note and told me to call you. And if you have any questions, he said you can call him." Karen is audibly annoyed at this, and she asks for the number, which I gave her. And I hear nothing else until I go back into work after my week off. So fast forward to when I'm feeling good enough to work. I call up work, and I get put through to my boss's boss, and I tell her that I'm feeling much better. I still have a bad cough, but it's only set off by extremely cold weather. I told them I'm ready to come back to work. She's happy, and she gives me the whole "glad to have you back" speech before giving me my hours. I thank her and get ready for my shift. So all's well for the first few days, and then on Sunday, just as the store is closing up, my boss comes to me smiling an evil smile. Karen had seen me coughing all day, and at some point, she decides I would be given this next job. She looked at me while still smiling, and she said, "You know what? You need to go outside right now and bring in all the merchandise we have on display. You'll do this all by yourself. This won't be a problem, will it?" She was trying to sound sweet, but I knew this was payback for calling in sick. I say to her, "Karen, you do know that I've been coughing all day. If I go out there and move the heavy stuff, I won't be able to breathe." She just looks at me with the grin fading before she replied with a demanding tone, "No, you will do this. I'm your boss, and those are the orders." I did try to fight her, but she wasn't having it. So as I walked to the door, I grinned and thought to myself, screw it. I'll just do what she says, and maybe I'll collapse or something. That'll teach her. I proceeded outside into the bitter cold evening air, and I started moving everything inside, all by myself. Some employees did try to help me, but they were yelled at by Karen to leave me alone. By the time I was done, the store had been closed for 45 minutes. I got inside after bringing the last piece of merchandise in the store, and once the shutter was down, I immediately started coughing. It got so bad that the staff that were stacking shelves, the security guard, all my coworkers just stopped what they were doing and rushed to me. And I just couldn't stop. I felt like my lungs were crackling with each cough. Eventually, Karen came over and she saw me on my knees with people around me. And she starts shouting, "Get back to work. You've got 3 more hours left. You are not getting out of it." And that's when Karen screwed up. I hear another woman's voice chiming in, and she cut off Karen without a single moment's hesitation. I later learned that she was the district manager. I hear, "Hey, what the hell is going on?" She then notices me and says, "What's wrong?" My coworkers explained what happened as I was still coughing, in between trying to drink some water. The district manager just says, "Send him home right now. No excuses. He can't work like this." Karen tried to argue, but it was pointless. And at this moment, my coworker chimes in and says, "Hey, OP's our ride home. If he leaves now, we have no way home." Boss then looked to Karen and said, "They go too. I won't have staff left here in this cold with no way home." So with that, boss takes off, and Karen begrudgingly let me and my coworkers go. I just smiled, and I wheezily said, "I hope there's not too much work left to do." I was let go a week later as I was seasonal staff for Christmas, but seeing the look on Karen's face when she had to do our work was absolutely priceless. Guys, petty bosses getting put in their place will always put a smile on my face. And also, I know Christmas season's a busy time of year, and usually employees aren't allowed to take certain days off around the holidays, but OP did mention that his workplace had a policy that you weren't allowed sick leave around the weeks leading up to Christmas. Can someone please let me know if you've experienced something similar to this, because that sounds wild to me. Alright, so this is a story that I've been sitting on for a few years now. A couple of months ago, I've decided that it's finally time to let the world know what happened to this entitled sociopath who dared to cross the neighborhood. To set the stage, I used to live in a big but not huge city. I lived near the corner of a dense suburb, nestled between overstuffed apartment buildings, a river that smelled like diesel when at low tide, and 2 busy highways. I was a minority in this neighborhood, and I caught a lot of heat for it. People really didn't like white people there, but enough of our neighbors were accepting of us that aside from a few disagreements between families and the beatings that came with them, I didn't feel like I was in danger when leaving my home. It was a rough neighborhood, but it was my home, and it protected its own. The community center was like a temple, and let's call her AM. She was the priestess. In our neighborhood, she was respected like a living deity, and her calm and understanding reflected her status. I never once saw her behave without a strong moral code. And the final piece to set the stage is our former landlord. She was a short Asian lady in all the stereotypical ways. She was kind and sweet. Our house was above my parents' pay grade, and she knew it. She went out of her way to find house repair and maintenance jobs for tenants that were having money problems. She would pay them by taking chunks out of their rent, oftentimes a bit larger than how much the work they did was worth. Now looking back, that was probably illegal, but that's irrelevant because she died. Her sons, who wanted nothing to do with real estate, took over the business. They couldn't make heads or tails of how she managed to float books with so much red in them, and they began dumping properties, and ours was on that list. I harbor no ill will towards them, and I still wish them the best. But the guy who bought the house, well, enter the sociopath and today's victim. The guy wasted no time in making our lives complete hell. The guy was demanding, strict, and living here, things had to be his way or no way at all. He raised the rent and told us if we don't like it, move somewhere else. We'd been there for several years, and we were paying below market even from the onset, so this was a huge blow by itself. The next blow came when he said that the rent had to be ready in full on the 1st of every month. No partial payments, no work to reduce it, no extensions. Full rent on the 1st of the month or an eviction notice on the 2nd. This was hemorrhaging our savings, but we were surviving for the moment. Meanwhile, AM had lobbied hard for the city to co-fund a revival project to renovate the entire aging suburb, and she succeeded. One street at a time had conga lines of work trucks almost every day, and people were getting old leaky pipes replaced, sinkholes in yards patched, fences repaired, paint renewed. It was an amazing thing, and also an enticing thing for the sociopath. Being at the corner of the neighborhood, our house was on the last street on the list, and Sociopath wanted us out so he could relist the house after renovation. He never said this directly, but multiple conversations made his intent clear, even for 10-year-old me. Random inspections, overhyping of minor problems with the house, even so far as trying to bring us up on completely false animal abuse charges because our cat was attacked by what we believe was a raccoon. The guy tried to claim that we did it, and we're thinking, yeah, because a vet can't figure out the difference between knife wounds and a mauling. We read the writing on the wall, and we began preparations to move. We decided to move in with my oldest brother in a town over. Most of us had moved, except my other brother, who stayed behind because he still had a lot of social ties in the town we lived in, and his new job meant that if he cut corners, he could keep paying Sociopath's inflated bills. Well, despite his best efforts, he came up $20 short one month, and Sociopath just jumped on it. My brother had 30 days to get out. So with that, we make the 400-mile trip back to get the rest of our stuff. And I can't say that I approved of my brother's living conditions, but that's beside the point. The month passed rather uneventfully. I guess Sociopath figured he'd won, so there was no need to burn the gas to drive out and gloat. The neighborhood had learned what was going on, and that was the first time I'd ever been back in that neighborhood where I didn't get a single call-out, a single glare, a single racist remark. Everybody behaved reverently, and it was kind of disturbing in all honesty. I guess people in lower incomes all know what eviction means and felt like, and I was having a bad enough time already. Well, 20 days later, the landlord says it's time to leave. We still had a week left, but that didn't matter. We didn't have the money to try fighting it with a lawyer. That's when AM descended from the heavens, and she bought us a couple of extra days. But it was evident that he really wanted us out. Possibly because the work trucks were now one street away. The last time I ever saw the house I grew up in, workmen were throwing away my childhood possessions into a large bin, when we supposedly still had 3 days left to leave. Everything that follows is a collection of information that I got through the grapevine and phone calls with people present at the events. So immediately, Sociopath moved into the house himself. Why, you may ask? Because people who owned the homes they were living in were getting the full cost of renovations comped by the city. This man figured that by moving in himself, he'd be able to get the house he bought at liquidation price renovated for free and flip it for mega profits, and AM was having none of it. She explained to him that at the time the revival project was approved, that the house was a rental lot, and they can't change the budget now. She then explained to him that the partial cost coverage that had been approved for the lot was in our name, not his, and he wasn't eligible for partial cost comping either. He'd have to pay every penny himself, and since the entire neighborhood was getting a facelift, he was required to at least renovate the exterior. Otherwise, she'd see the house condemned as an eyesore or dilapidated or whatever the legal term is. He went really cheap on the renovations, basically put in new carpets, a coat of paint, and little did he know, this would later come to bite him in the ass. He then began trying to sell the house in earnest, but the neighborhood remembered what he had done. There were vandalisms when nobody was there, loud noises from the neighbors when people were there to look the house over, and anytime a prospective buyer asked around, they got the full stink eye from anyone they talked to. They made sure that he simply could not get that house sold at market value. After 3 months of this, he lowered the listing price, and then a month later, he lowered it again and finally got a bite. AM personally made sure that he had to file every single piece of paperwork before it changed hands. Every single part of the house had to be inspected thoroughly. And that's when Karma herself caught up with him. In his hasty and cheap renovations, he somehow damaged the pipes, and there was black mold inside the walls. AM remembered how he treated us, and she decided to pay him back in kind. Now, I never heard exactly how she pulled it off, but she managed to delay him getting the news about the black mold being discovered for several days. Long enough that by the time he did get the news, he didn't have enough time to try getting it cleaned, or make one last-ditch effort to save the house. The house was condemned days later. In their final act, AM and members of the neighborhood filed every single complaint and injunction they could, and arranged for him to be compelled by the city to demolish the house immediately, a cost that he had to pay out of his own pocket. This entitled idiot tried to destroy a family and broke laws just to make some quick cash, and instead was left fighting a year-long battle and ended up losing thousands and thousands of dollars. Wow guys, what a post that was. And I know I say this a lot, but the landlord got everything he deserved. Like, the guy broke laws without giving a damn about anybody and basically tried to destroy a family that was barely scraping by, that couldn't even afford to fight back if they tried. And guys, it broke my heart knowing that the family just had to watch as their possessions were just thrown away, even though they still had time to move out. And listen, I don't actually blame him for expecting market value rent and for it to be on time. That's totally normal. The other stuff, however, is just crazy. And that, my friends, is r/EntitledPeople. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. I hope you didn't shake your heads too hard, and I hope you got a smile on your face from that last story, because I sure as heck did. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/malicious compliance episode, where OP obeys a Karen boss's orders and destroys her career. It's such a funny story, so go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.